Armor is an essential part of CSGO. You'll almost never see a pro buy a rifle without purchasing it first, unless you're on Astralis. While a lot of information about armor is known, like its value removing most Aimpunch, a lot of details aren't, like how much damage is removed when wearing it. I asked Sloth Squadron about this topic, and as always, he paid off with a ton of information. Thanks, Sloth. Now go make a video. First, one of the benefits of armor is removing some of the damage from weapons, provided that the bullet doesn't land in the legs. Each weapon has its own stat called weapon penetration percentage, which determines how much damage will be applied if the weapon's bullet hits someone through armor. The damage applied to a person being shot is the weapon's penetration percentage of the weapons they're being shot with, multiplied by how much damage would occur if the person didn't have armor. For instance, if a weapon has 90% armor penetration and an unarmored shot with the weapon would do 100 damage, then it would only do 90 to an armored opponent. This doesn't mean you can just take the damage here and multiply it by the percentage, since different parts of the bodies receive different damage. The damage modifiers on screen calculate how much damage is dealt to an unarmored opponent when multiplied by the weapon's damage stat. Once multiplying these two together, then you can multiply the armor penetration to finally get the damage that will be done. This doesn't take into account fall off damage though, which makes the formula a bit more complicated. To take it into account, you multiply the damage by the range modifier of the gun raised to the distance in units you are from someone over 500. Since everything we're doing is multiplying numbers, we can do multiplication in any order we want, and it's easiest to do this range modifier first so that we don't have to worry about it later. So, as a final example, let's say someone with armor is shot point blank in the stomach with an AK-47. Let's find the damage. First, we take the base damage of the weapon, 36, and multiply it by its range modifier raised to the distance of 60 over 500 units, which I'll just treat as 1 for simplicity because it's really close to 1. Then we take this and multiply it by the 1.25 times damage modifier of the stomach. Finally, we'll take this number and multiply it by the armor penetration to get the final damage. Oh, and the number is truncated, or rounded down no matter its value. And when testing it, briefly, I'll talk about Aimpunch, the jerky thing you get when you get gushed with a Glock. When wearing armor, shots to the stomach and chest reduce Aimpunch 95%. Yup, you still get Aimpunch, but it's pretty subtle. However, this can still cause people to miss despite them aiming on others. Here's the old implementation of the Aimpunch, which has stayed the same in CSGO, mostly. Basically, Aimpunch is going to be the amount of flinch on the server multiplied by the Aimpunch amount. The important thing to note is that Aimpunch is technically counted as recoil in CSS and CSGO. To see that it's a part of the recoil system, you can adjust the recoil skill command and compare the difference. And because the two games have different systems of recoil, it performs differently. Like, for instance, in CSS, when spraying with an M4, you don't get any Aimpunch, likely because the recoil is maxed out. But because CSGO has no cap on recoil, you'll get wrecked by doing so. It also wasn't bad since recoil in CSS decays very quickly and in the first few shots, so if you weren't shooting it wouldn't be so bad. What's interesting is the more damage a bullet does, the more your aim will be punched. Neat. Strangely, if you wear a helmet, a shot to the head will do no aim punch. This is actually kind of a problem, considering your head still makes a jerky animation when being shot, which can strangely kind of give you a second life if they miss the second shot as a result of your head moving.
I wanted to knife that guy so bad, dude.
You probably would have died.
Yeah.
Finally, how does damage to your armor work? It's actually a lot simpler than you would think, and the simpleness actually causes a problem. To determine how much of your armor will disappear after a shot, you take the amount of damage the armor blocked and divide it by 2, and then round up this number, so 0.1 will become 1. This explains why so many people are at 99 Kevlar, because missed HE grenades that are pretty far away can still do a very small amount of damage that is rounded up to 1. Simple, right? For example, let's look at our AK scenario earlier. An unarmored AK shot at this range will do 45 in the stomach, and when we have armor it does 34. We take this difference, 11, which is how much the armor blocked, and divide it by 2 and round up, which is 6. Subtract this from full armor, and we get 94. And when testing it, success! So what's the problem I was talking about? Well, as already said, the damage given to armor is the HP the armor saves divided by 2, which works well for almost every gun, except the CoD Gun. The CoD Gun has an armor penetration of 100%, aka the damage done on someone with armor is the exact same as if they weren't wearing it, aka armor saves no damage when being shot with a CoD Gun. So we take this 0 damage that the armor saves and divide it by 2, and we get 0. Does this mean armor takes no damage to an SG? Yes. Another weird thing about this system is that weaker weapons will do way more damage than stronger weapons to armor, because weaker weapons have smaller armor penetration percentages, meaning more damage is blocked by armor. It's not really a big deal, since no matter your armor amount, it will still block the same amount of HP, and thus its only real critique could be realism, I guess, but since that's not a thing in CSGO, it doesn't really matter. Additionally, because armor blocks the same amount of damage every time regardless of its percentage, it's best not to buy it unless you're really low and you may run out in the next round. In conclusion, armor in terms of calculations is pretty simple. but there's a lot of information on it that is interesting to study if you're kind of like into that stuff.